Greetings, travelers. Welcome to the Wicked Scoundrel. Located in a caravan district of exotic brothels and armed tax collectors, parked between a stinking oxen pen and an abandoned potter's workshop, you have arrived at the last inn in the multiverse, the tavern at the end of time. Pull up a seat, grab a drink, and enjoy a tale of adventure. Tonight's story will begin shortly, but first, we have some business to attend. In honor of our protagonist making some new friends, our drink special this week will be the Desert Oasis. It is a light summery cocktail to be enjoyed on the patio or near the water. If you want to know the drink specials in advance of the episodes, they're available on our Patreon. And as always, please enjoy responsibly. This story may contain descriptions of adult themes, including violence, coarse language, and casual racism. Audience discretion is advised. If you want to read along with the story, you can do so at thewickedscoundrel.com, or get them earlier than everyone else by supporting us on Patreon. The Wicked Scoundrel is not on traditional forms of social media like Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. So if you enjoy this content, please like, follow, subscribe, and share on your preferred platform. And finally, a young half-orc awakes to find herself in some troubled waters. Adventurers, The Wicked Scoundrel is pleased to present our 4th episode from the series Path of Sorrow. This is Friends Along the Way. The morning birdsong faded, and the running water beneath her began to roar as she woke, face down. The sun, rising over the citadel's spires, warmed her back as she stirred, lifting her face from the rough bark of the logs that left unknown sleep scars across her cheek. She sat up and allowed her eyes to adjust to the morning light, scratching her head and tousling her shoulder-length black hair. The sound of the flowing water rang differently, and as her eyes gained focus, she saw cliffs at either side of her, growing taller as they rushed past. Sorrow was jarred fully awake when her makeshift raft slammed back against a rock, loosening the logs in their hempen bindings. The raft swiveled quickly in the rushing water, turning to face forward, where she saw the river rapidly descending into a narrow stone corridor before her. Oh, fuck me! She grabbed the long pole she'd been using for the past week to keep the raft moving, and dropped the end into the water behind the raft to use as a rudder. But the river was moving so quickly that the pole simply floated on the surface. Downstream, she could see a rock jutting up from the turbulent river, water crashing hard against it. She jammed the pole down into the water to try and shove the raft to the right, around the obstacle. But the corner clipped a rock with a crunch. The raft jarred, causing Sorrow to have to reel to regain her balance, as they twisted around the rock and continued downstream. Ahead, the river curved to the right, and Sorrow could see that her fragile little raft was headed towards the rock face, rising up on the far side. She lifted the pole and jammed it down between the middle 2 logs of the raft, inside the rope binding to keep it from floating up again, and used it as a rudder to steer the raft clear of the stone wall. Water washed over and splashed up between the shifting logs, making the already hard-to-control vehicle difficult to stand or move across. Downriver, she saw 2 more obstacles in the water. The first, a rapidly approaching deadhead, mottled with jutting branches and debris. Sorrow steered her rudder to direct the raft away from the deadhead, but towards what looked like a divot in the river, where the competing currents converged, crashing against each other. The raft cleared the deadhead with ease, but the rolling waves beneath the raft caused the logs to shift, and her foot slipped between them. She banged her shin as she dropped to her ass, and quickly retrieved her foot to realized that she had more stability if she stayed low. Kneeling, she steered the raft to the right, hoping to avoid another spot of rolling current ahead. The raft turned, lurched as the rudder caught on something beneath the surface, and dove over a small rock. River foam splashed up between the logs, catching her in the face and eyes. Before she could wipe the water from her vision, the raft twisted in the wild current and slammed into the right side of the narrow canyon that now rose 30 feet above her head. The blow released an end of one of the logs that now floated independently, lolling dangerously high in the air around her head. She reached out to hold it in place, but her shifting weight caused the support beneath her to loosen, and she fell through the floor of the raft. She grasped for the logs on either side of her as she fell, missing the one on the right. Water splashed her face again, catching her with her mouth and eyes open. It rushed into her sinuses and down her throat, choking her blindly. She clutched desperately to the log, unable to see the dangers ahead, and each time she tried to clear her vision, the river would pull her from her life support. Seconds later, the log slammed headlong into the side, causing Sorrow to lose her grip and tumble into the water. Waves crashed over her. She struggled to right herself, her throat still filled with water. She briefly caught sight of her bedroll floating over a drop ahead of her, and a moment later, she was there. Sorrow woke face down in the mud. The noon sun sitting high in the sky warmed her back as water rumbled in the distance. A low, frustrated growl jarred her fully awake, and she lifted her face from the ground, leaving a visible imprint in the wet sand. She sat up and allowed her eyes to adjust to the midday sun, scratching her head and tousling her damp hair, to find herself between two large camels. Before her lay a 30-foot pool lined with lush plant life beneath a crashing waterfall that descended from a 40-foot cliff. About the pool, a few of the logs from her raft and some of her belongings had washed up on the sandy shores, while the others flowed downstream as it continued southwest. Sorrow pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her muscular gray arms around them, lowered her head, quietly cried. She'd left Jaren's Pride, a desolate holiday village, yet somehow the way forward was so much more intense. She thought about returning home to the comfortable hopelessness she'd known for so long. She thought about pushing forward towards some new unknown loneliness. Peeking over her knees with her lips pressed against them, she looked up to the waterfall. The way back was lost. That choice was no longer hers. You cannot stay here, child, she heard Nana's voice ring as images of her village in flames flashed through her memory. She could almost hear the sounds of battle carried on the smoke, and feel Nana's hand on her shoulder. You must go. Now. A camel nudged Sorrow back to the present, with another long growl. She thanked him with a sniffle and a firm scratch behind the jaw as she wiped her tears on the back of her hands. Then she sighed, stood, and surveyed the air. Beyond the lush greenery of the pool lay a vast desert. The camel to her left nudged her, urging her forward. No, she said in response, sharing a scratch with her as well. Time to get my shit together. She took off her wet clothes and hung them over some shrubs to dry in the sun. Then she moved about the pool, gathering the items that had spilled from her pack during the river ride. Over the course of an hour, she also found some fresh fruit and vegetables, and nearly an ounce of ditch meat in the growth about the oasis that she gathered as well. She carried it all back to the northern bank, where she took some time to let a few things dry out and take in. Okay, so the bedroll and crowbar are gone, she explained to her new companions as she fed them some freshly picked woodpecker. But I found 2 gold coins and this great walking stick. She held up a simple wooden staff about 40 feet. The camel she had begun calling Akbar snorted. I know it's not alfalfa, but I got a long walk. As she lowered the staff, a sprig of alfalfa grew in the sand where the staff made contact. You know, unless you guys wanted to give me a ride downstream, she said with a sarcastic shrug. Aklu ate up the alfalfa immediately. Wait, what? Sorrow held up the staff, placed the end back on the ground, and a daisy spread, which Aklu also ate. Oh, you probably shouldn't, she considered for a moment as she stepped away from him. But he had already devoured the plant. Alfalfa, she said unnecessarily loud, and another sprig of alfalfa grew where the staff contacted the ground. The other camel, Matea, curled up on the ground and ate with a thankful growl. No shit, Sorrow marveled. Okay, well, I can fuck around with this along the way. Another daisy sprouted at her feet, which Aklu moved forward, but Matea beat him. Thank you both for your companionship, Sorrow said in farewell. Aklu nudged against her, pushing her backwards. She scratched his neck again. I know. I'm gonna miss you too, she joked. He groaned and pushed her again. Easy, buddy. I'll get some more alfalfa, just. He pushed her again, and she stumbled, falling over the lane. He began to stand immediately. Sorrow grabbed a handful of long, coarse hair and was hoisted into the air. To her amazement, she was given a moment to get properly situated on Matea's back, and then the three started west along the riverbank. The lush foliage about the oasis diminished as they moved away from the waterfall, giving way to open desert beneath clear skies, though she could see dark clouds over the mountains far to the south. They traveled in near silence for many hours, broken only when Sorrow occasionally reminded her companions that she would like to remain within eyesight of the river. It wasn't long before the sun began to hang low in the west. Ahead, she spotted what at first appeared to be a rocky upcropping. But as they approached, it became apparent that it was a small tent settlement. When they were within 40 feet, a short, round man approached. Hey, hold there, he said with authority, drawing some attention from the others deeper in the encampment. Sorrow asked her mount to halt, but she only slowed some. Matea, stop, she said with a little more authority, concerned for a moment that she was atop a beast over which she had literally no control. Thankfully, the beast came to a stop, and Aklu sidled up next to them with a groan. Thank you, she said, hopping down and giving the beast a quick pat and a few sprigs of alfalfa. What do you want? The man demanded, holding up a spear nearly twice his height. Beyond him, Sorrow could see they had built the encampment about a small bend in the river, where the water pooled. The plant life here, however, seemed different. It was similar to the prickly carnivorous plants back in Randa Fell, in the hills beneath the cursed citadel spires, and not like the broad, flat leaves of the oasis she'd left earlier that day. The people within the encampment looked malnourished and haggard from days or even weeks of travel, and consisted primarily of women and children. A few of those moved forward between the circle of tents to see who the small man was addressing. One of them, a tall, slender woman of remarkable beauty, with brown hair, made her way to the front of them. I don't... Sorrow stammered, unsure of what to say. She stepped forward a few paces, leaving a trail of 3 daisies, which Aklu immediately began to devour. Hey, don't you come any closer, the man threatened, jutting the spear in her direction. I'm just a traveler, Sorrow said nervously. I lost my bedroll? Oh, for goodness sake. The tall, pretty woman stepped up beside the short guard and raised the tip of his spear away from Sorrow with her forearm. She's clearly a child. She's an orc, look at her, the tiny man contested. The woman stepped towards Sorrow slowly. What's your name? Sorrow, she replied plainly. Where did you come from, Sorrow? The woman seemed very kind, and behind her, still within the tent line, she could see more people coming forward to see what the commotion was all about. In all, Sorrow could see at least a dozen people, the adults murmuring amongst themselves, while the children just stared. Randa Fells, she again said plainly, opting to keep her village a secret. More murmurs ran through the crowd behind her, and Matea let out a long groan. That's over 700 miles. Where are your parents? She asked, a twinge of concern in her voice. There was an ogre? Sorrow questioned the last word, unsure if it was accurate. Images of Jaren's pride aflame, people screaming in terror flashing across her memories. And trolls? So many trolls. Scenes of neighbors and friends being beaten and stabbed flashed across her thoughts. Nana told me to run. Oh my God, the woman whispered under her breath. Okay, why don't you come in? It's going to get cold when the sun sets. She put her arms around Sorrow's shoulder and ushered everyone back to camp. I hope you enjoyed our fourth episode and our first tale of adventure from Path of Sorrow. We will return in the next few weeks with our next episode, where we'll meet a reptilian hunter from the swamps of Black Mine. Until then, you can check out thewickedscoundrel.com for more stories and maybe some brand new merchandise. To support the channel, like and share the stream, follow and subscribe to the channel, or support the Wicked Scoundrel on Patreon. Once again, all the links are in the description. Thank you once again for joining us at the tavern this evening. We look forward to seeing you again soon.